You know I'm right. The show that uncovers the origin stories for some of the biggest names in sports, entertainment, and media. Nick Durst here, and today I am joined by somebody who is in sports, he's in media, so he's going to be a great guest for us today, right in our target demographic. If you live in the New York, New Jersey area, chances are you have heard him or seen him. It's kind of unavoidable. He pops up on all the networks around here. And proud to welcome in right now our guest, Dan Graca. Dan, welcome to the show.
Nick, thanks for having me. And yeah, I live in the New York, New Jersey area, so I fit the demo perfectly. I guess I'm the right choice.
Absolutely. So you are from Hillside, New Jersey. So local guy, like we mentioned here.
That's
what
right.
What was your childhood like? Did you play a lot of sports, and was there any sort of teams that you gravitated towards more than the others?
Yeah, I mean, I played all the sports growing up. Baseball, soccer, basketball mostly. No organized football, believe it or not, because none of the schools that I went to, whether it was grammar school, high school, none of them had a football team. So no organized football, even though I would probably say that football is my, favorite sport. Ironically enough, I never played it though. But yeah, just like any other kid, played sports into high school. What did I do? I played baseball and soccer in high school. And yeah, just unfortunately didn't have what it took to become a professional though.
Yeah, absolutely. It's most of us there. And from there, you end up attending Rutgers University. Did you know going into school that you wanted to pursue a career in sports broadcasting?
Likely, yeah. Obviously just because it was a big part of my life growing up, not even just playing, but of course, following and being a fan and just really kind of being absorbed. I mean, it's so much easier when you're a kid and you don't have the, real life responsibilities that we do now as we get older, of course. And, even my friends now from time to time, we always talk about things that, we would obsess over and so many other things in sports related that we would be able to keep our eyes on growing up as kids. But now you just don't have that opportunity. Like as you get older, you can equate it to almost like the dinner plate. And as you get older, there's things you have to like push off the plate. There's only so many things you could fit onto it. And, you're not able to be as absorbed and to watch every single game maybe that you did as a kid. But, now that it's my job, of course, you have to keep one eye on it and, a pretty good focus. But yeah, I mean, it was a big part of my life growing up. So when I went to school, I figured that, yeah, that was probably something that I would like to pursue. As the old saying goes, if you do something you love, you don't have to work a day in your life.
Absolutely. So you're around that time, where you're in college there, basically football team, not great. You guys got Todd Frazier, so he was kind of like the big man on campus, I'm sure. But then, the football team got good under Schiano. Then it went through some bad times here. So as an alumni here, are you excited about the future of the program under Schiano again?
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, because, when he came back a couple of years ago, I mean, it was low as it could possibly be. And, kind of the bottom feeders of the Big Ten, laughing stock. I mean, really, and really just non-competitive. I mean, and to be quite honest with you, I mean, it was almost like JV versus the varsity. But, it's funny because, when you look at the football program, like when they finally had their peak under Schiano the first time, like in 05, 06, like I was already done. I was already out of school. Yeah. Like, I mean, when I was there, they were bad. I mean, the football team was really bad. I mean, I was there, I remember me and my buddies joke about, we had like the student season tickets during the dreadful 0-11 and 97 season under Terry Shea when they were still in the Big East. And they were just, again, non-competitive. And you wondered, would this thing ever turn? And Schiano's first couple of years, it wasn't all that good. They were taking their lumps and they still had to build the culture and really sell the program to the state of New Jersey to be able to attract recruits and all those things. So then when it finally started to turn, even though I wasn't there, of course, I basked in it and, really took some pride in it. Kind of like the way it's been with the basketball team for the last few years. I mean, I could not be more pumped at just what, Steve Pikiell's done to this basketball program the last few seasons. And I've got a chance to know a couple of the players. And it's, for people that went to the school and really, developed this passion for the program, for the school, it's nice to see that they're getting that appreciation on a national stage because they deserve it.
Yeah, absolutely. Rutgers, big turnaround here, finally getting their footing in the Big Ten, which was a big money move, but also.
And it's a no-brainer. Nick, like when they were getting beaten up, and there was a lot of lean years, as we talked about, right? Whether it was football, basketball, and they were, at the bottom, people would always, oh, why did they join the Big Ten? Big Ten never should have. It's a no-brainer. Like you said, I mean, money makes the world go round. It was a no-brainer to join the conference. And now you're starting to see some of the results on the field and on the court. And, hopefully it continues that way.
Yeah, I'm very confident that Shiano's going to get them to be a consistent top 25 team, just like the basketball team has been. And, there's a lot of great players in the state that always head to the South. So might as well keep them in the state.
Absolutely. I mean, it's, New Jersey, this area, New Jersey, New York. I mean, it's a fertile recruiting ground. It really and truly is. And he's done a good job keeping the football players in state because, any kid that age, I don't care if you're an athlete or not, if you're just any old student and you don't play sports, the college experience, people want to go away from home. They've waited, 16, 17 years of their life. They want to go be on their own. They want to make new friends. They don't want to be under parental supervision, that type of thing. So I get it. And that's going to be the trick to try to keep these kids at home. There's a lot of really talented players in the state of New Jersey.
All it's going to take is for, the next Ray Rice to attend the school, see somebody who goes to the pros and going to be golden. So we'll
and he's been able to, nail down a couple of, and, these recruiting rankings are always so arbitrary because we never know how they're going to develop. But I mean, he's had top, 35 recruiting classes nationally over the last couple of years. And that's a good place to start. It really is a good place to start.
No doubt about that. And the school, a lot of these players going to Rutgers probably not going to the pros, but you're getting a great education there and there's great stuff. For you, when you were there, did you do any internships?
Yeah, I did. And, I tell people all the time, who ask me questions about who want to get into this business and, what should I do? What's the first step? And there's a lot of different ways to skin a cat. People take different paths and that sort of thing. I actually, at the time when I went into school, as a matter of fact, I also had other, interests, other passions and so on and so forth. I was a professional musician, believe it or not.
Really?
Once upon a time, while I was in college. So that kind of deviated me off of the media path for a little bit because that was something that I pursued pretty heavily, for a few years. And, I did that along with going to school and, maybe put the brakes on the schooling there for a little bit. And then, of course, got back into it after the music thing kind of fizzled out and realized that wasn't going to be the path for me. But the very last semester that I was in school, I ended up getting an internship with ESPN radio here in New York. And that really set everything up. And I tell people to this day, like the most important thing for you to break into this field, if you're serious about it, is get that internship because it's all about not necessarily acquiring and developing the skills that you need to be able to do this, on a full-time basis, but it's about making the connections. It's about networking because that's what this thing really is all about. It's who you know, the relationships you develop. So for me to be able to get my foot in the door, I mean, when I interned, right, I interned in the promotions department. Like it had nothing to do with production, it had nothing to do with on the air, behind the scenes. This was the promotions department. We would go to different events and different games and we would hand out flyers and magnets and koozies and, whatever the heck it was to promote the station. But along those few months, you get introduced to people that work at the station. You express to them that you want to do that one day. And then from there, once my internship was finished at the end of that semester, they needed somebody to screen calls on Thanksgiving morning. And here I am like, I'll do it. I'll do it. That's me. I get to sit in the control room. There's the studio on the other side of the glass. Like I actually can see the person doing the show. That's what I want to do. So, and then it took off from there. And then a position opened up, a part-time position. And, they hired me to do some, associate producing stuff. And that just, continued me further along here on this journey.
So tell me about this transition here from associate producer to, you're getting your chance to either fill in as a host or do updates, which at the time ESPN Radio did a lot of updates. So tell me how you'd be able to do that. Were you constantly in the program director's ear, like, hey, I'm available, I'm here, or is it just where you're in there all the time and they're like, hey, Dan, you want to try this out? We have a fill-in shift or something like that.
Well, it was tricky. I'll be honest with you, because obviously, that you didn't want to do this, like what you were doing right now. You didn't want to do that. But at the time, that's what you were doing. And you owed it to everybody that you worked with to do the best job you can because they're doing their job and you have to do yours. But yeah, they knew. And I would express it to them that ultimately I wanted to be on air. So I would probably say that it took maybe a couple of years before I got an opportunity to do some on-air stuff. And it was, I want to say New Year's Day one year that they needed somebody to, do an update shift, and boom, jumped at the opportunity. And it was rough at first. I think back to how, nervous I was at the time, at least for the, the first few. And I'm sitting here saying to myself, boy, I hope they just don't come in, like with the hook and pull me off the air, because, I knew that it was an adjustment period, but, you got a little bit more comfortable. And then there were a few more opportunities to do the same thing that opened up. And, then we came to a point where they realized, okay, he doesn't really want to do the behind the scenes stuff anymore. Let's give an opportunity to grow a little bit more on the air. So then they let me do some like on-site reporting, covering games, filing reports from, different events and so on and so forth. And I did that. And then I guess it was, a few years on where, for the time being, we went our separate ways, and I landed over doing sports updates with 1010 Wins, which was a heck of a lot of fun and great experience. I mean, that's one of the most listened to stations that we have in New York City, and it's an all news station, but, people are still listening, of course. And so that was a big responsibility doing that. And then got my foot in the door there at Sirius XM to begin doing updates that they had over there as well on the NFL radio channel. And the relationship with them still continues to this day, believe it or not, of course, in a different capacity. But yeah, it's little by little different doors opened up. And, as the opportunities present themselves, you try to make the most out of them, and been doing it ever since, I guess.
So you do a lot of work with Sirius still. What would you say is your favorite channel to do a show on? Obviously, you do stuff with Mad Dog Sports, you do the baseball stuff, the football stuff. Is there any particular channel you love most? And how does your prep work change based on what channel you're going to appear on?
I mean, to me, it might sound like a cop-out answer, but you better love whatever you're doing that day the most.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? Like, we were talking before the show. Okay, yesterday I had a show on ESPN radio. That was my sole focus yesterday. Had to lock in, so all day consumed with that.
Yep.
I'll be doing a baseball show later on this afternoon. I'm in baseball mode right now. All the prep work I did last night, I'm locked in on the baseball. That's where my focus is today. That when you wear a lot of different hats, which I do right now, that's how you have to approach it. And sometimes, it can feel like your head is on a swivel, right? I mean, you don't know which way you're coming and going, because you're doing one thing one day, one thing the next. And, thankfully, there've been a lot of times where I have multiple in one day, and you really have to make sure the prep is obviously key, and I can't stress that enough to people. When you do the preparation, to me, you're doing the show. Like if it's no different than studying for a test, right? Like if you study for the test, you put the work in, you pay attention, you take the notes, you do all the readings. Once the test is there, that's the easy part, because you've been already doing the work leading up. When you prep for the shows, and if you have all the information and you have some topics you think are going to be engaging and so on and so forth, then when the show happens, it's like a playground. That's easy. So, and I think that the audience can also, I mean, me personally, like when I listen to shows, watch shows or whatnot, because I do this for a living, I can tell who knows what they're talking about. I could tell who put the work in. I could tell who's just up there BS and trying to get through the 2 hours, the 3 hours, whatever it is. So I think prep is really, really important, because you owe it to your audience. If they're going to sit there and give you 2 hours of their day, 3 hours of their day, you owe it to them to put in the time and the work to give them an honest effort.
Absolutely. For you, how brutal is that when you do that 6 a.m. shift? I know when I used to intern radio about 10 years ago, used to hate getting up at 4 o'clock in the morning. That seems to be a rough one, but it is fun because you get a lot of listeners. So your thoughts on that, and also what's your favorite time of day to be on the radio?
I'll be waking up at 4 a.m. tomorrow, as a matter of fact. So, I'll experience it again firsthand. Yeah, I mean, it's an adjustment, right? Because nobody's waking up at 4 a.m. unless they have to.
Right.
But I always try to make the best out of it. You wake up early, you do the show early, like you said, it's in the morning, it's the drive. You think people are up and out and whatnot, and then it's done early, right? Then you have the rest of your day in all likelihood. You can enjoy, and it almost, to me, whenever I do like an early morning thing, it almost feels like I cheated the day and I didn't really work. Because by the time the show is over, that's when like most people are getting to work. And and I realize that, and it's like my day's over. I can put my feet up, I could go out, I could do whatever I want. I can, so I don't mind it. I enjoy it. As far as what my, favorite is, I probably, just because I've never really considered myself to be a morning person, if I can settle in and do something in the afternoon to where I can, not have to wake up too early, I don't have to necessarily rush to be where I'm at and that type of thing. I think the afternoon, early evening type stuff, works well for me.
Yeah, absolutely. I think with the morning, it's tough, especially if you're doing it consistently, because you gotta talk about the games from the night before. So you're up till 12
Right.
o'clock, maybe 4 hours of sleep. So it can get rough there. No doubt about that.
Right.
So
And your
everybody,
prep is compromised. I think, you know what I
absolutely.
mean? And I'm one of those, like, I don't function well doing all that stuff, like playing catch up in the morning. So I'll stay up later, probably a lot later than I should, just to make sure that I watched everything, that I know what we're going to be talking about, that I have a good understanding of what we're going to be dealing with. And then look, if I'm paying for it in the morning, oh well, like, you're not going to get a good night's sleep anyways if the alarm is going off at 4. So you know what, if I got to catch a nap and maybe not off for an hour after the show, that comes with the job. It comes with the territory. I'm okay with that.
Yeah, I remember one time when I was interning, I had to be in at 6 or something like that, and the Mets are playing on the West Coast, and they had an extra inning game. And when I got in, the game was still going on, so I was able to watch the end of the game in the morning, which is a rarity. So it was like, oh my gosh, crazy sometimes. So anybody who we've had on who's worked with Mad Dog's sports network, obviously at the time when you started around there, he was still the kind of the program director. Got to know for you, like, what was your experience like with him?
You're talking about with Chris?
Well, yeah, Chris Russo, Mad Dog.
Chris is great. I mean, obviously, his work and what he's done and what he's meant to the business speaks for itself. I mean, he kind of was one of the founding fathers of sports talk radio. Let's be real. What he and Mike did for all those years, that kind of laid the foundation for all the new media that you see right now, whether that's what we're doing right now here on this, whether it's any other type of debate show, podcast, anything, that kind of laid the foundation. Yeah, when at the early days of the channel, yeah, he was a little bit more influential in terms of what went on, and he realized, I think, pretty soon that that's a little bit more than he bargained for, because he's a talent, he's a talk show host. He don't worry about all that other behind the scenes stuff and having to program and schedule. And I think that he probably didn't want to do it anymore. I know I wouldn't want to do it anymore. I wouldn't want to get involved in that. Just let me do my thing. Like, leave that to somebody else. So as far as that's concerned, I really couldn't be bothered with that, and I'm sure that he couldn't either. So, but no, I mean, he and I have a really good relationship. We don't get a chance to see each other that much anymore, especially over the last 2 years, working remotely. And as a matter of fact, I don't think I've actually bumped into him probably since before the pandemic. But yeah, I mean, he's always been very, very nice to me, and that's cool for somebody that you grew up listening to and wanting to get in that field as well.
No doubt about that. So how did you end up with SNY? What was the process there for you to get either an audition or some tryout shows? And for you, any worries or concerns about doing TV? You've been doing radio for so long, and you're like, totally different ball game here, being on air with the camera in your face.
Well, I mean, Nick, to be quite honest with you, when you're as beautiful as I am, I mean, TV was the natural progression, right? I mean, let's be, I mean, come on, hey, look at this, huh? No.
Yeah.
Now, seriously though, it was something that I wanted to do. I mean, it felt like it was like the next step, right? Doing radio for so long and doing shows for so long, and what's television? It's doing radio, but in a lot more compressed time and a condensed time, and you have to maybe get to your points a little bit briefer. But I always said that, from the minute I started doing television, I think that all those years on the radio, doing long form talk formats and stuff like that, that made the TV transition a lot easier. Because if you could do a 4-hour talk show by yourself on the radio, you could do a half-hour television show when usually you're sitting there talking with other people. I mean, that's easy. That's a breeze. So yeah, I mean, I knew a couple of people that had, were working over there, reached out to them. They put me in touch with some of the higher ups, set up a meeting. It was a good introduction. And then, they threw me on, and I guess they didn't think I was horrible and, kept putting me on. And, things have changed a little bit, certainly over there since the pandemic, where, as a lot of the rest of the world, unfortunately, but, the relationship, I would say, has been going on now for probably going onwards of about 5 years, 6 years. And, lot of really, really good people over there, people I consider friends, lifelong friends, hopefully. And even though things have changed, I'm glad that I still, have some sort of a relationship with the network.
No doubt about that. It's pretty good shows there. Pre-pandemic, now we're down to that just the one show, but always a good time to watch those shows and hear you and your colleagues debate the hot topics of the day. So
And with the Met stuff and the Jet stuff, they do a great job with that. So I mean, if you're Met fan, Jet fan from a television standpoint, that's the place you're going to turn to. Of course, now we don't want to steer too many people to them after Jet games because we'd rather, of course, keep them on the radio, of course, and listening to me and Greg. But no, all those guys are great, and they do a great job.
So you grew up a huge Jets fan, season ticket holder. And you get this amazing job here doing the pregame, halftime, and postgame for all the Jets. What was your excitement level like when you initially landed that role?
Didn't feel real. I mean, to be quite honest with you, I remember going in, like when I went out, and I had it's funny, like I didn't really have much of a relationship with them as far as the business is concerned. Obviously, like you mentioned, fan growing up, had season tickets for, 2 decades with my family going to games and this and that. And so that was obviously a huge passion. And then when the opportunity came to, hey, now this spot is opened up, when I had gotten back in with ESPN, and they obviously pitched me knowing my, affinity for the team, and, they thought I would do a good job. So they hooked up the interview with the Jets. And I remember going over there, and it was like the car wash. You're meeting with the different higher ups in the organization. And I actually, I couldn't believe I was there, but it was a great introduction. It felt like I hit it off with all those people, and clearly I did, because, I ended up getting it. And a lot of those people, of course, are still there, and I consider them friends, and, I'm thankful to work with them, and so on and so forth. But yeah, once I got the official call from them, it was too good to be true, because you almost felt like if there's one thing that you're meant to do, if there's one thing that, you were kind of like put on this earth to do, given my childhood and growing up and everything, it felt like I had to probably be affiliated with the Jets in some way, shape, or form. So it was a natural fit, but it's certainly not something that I take for granted. And I almost like pinch myself every day that, I'm a part of the Jet family, so to speak, and, it's like, I would almost do it for free. And then when I see like that check come in the mail and it has like the Jet logo on it and has my name on the bottom, I say, how is this even possible? You know what I mean? Sure. So it's I'm super, super thankful to have that chance. And like I said, they're great people, and hopefully there's going to be an improvement this year on the field as well.
So walk me through here, like a typical Sunday, where you're doing the show from. Does it vary between if it's a home game or away game? And what's kind of your day there from, when you start till what time you're wrapping up?
It's a long day, but again, what's a long day when you're sitting there talking about a football game? It beats working for a living, as they say. But yeah, home games, we're at the stadium. Road games, we're in the ESPN studio in the city. We don't travel. So, I mean, just to give you an idea, home game, let's say if it's a 1 o'clock game, I'm usually in the car by, 9 o'clock in the morning, and get to the stadium. I like to get there a little bit early just to chill out, go on the field, see who I can rub elbows with, walk up to not walk up, but, take a ride up to the press box and see what's going on out there, kind of make my rounds and that sort of thing. And then we're on the air, 2 hours before kickoff. So 1 o'clock game, we're on the air at 11. And, we do the show. And then as soon as the show was over, it's like a mad dash, like, boom, now we got to get upstairs into the press box because we watch the game up in the box there. So, you got to get the elevators, and you want to make sure you're there in your seat in time. You don't want to miss anything. Halftime, we go into the radio booth, do the halftime show, and then it's back out to the press box for the second half. And I guess the only slight downside to the way the whole thing is conceived is that we have to leave a little bit early in the fourth quarter. So if it's a real tight game, you don't want to miss any of it. But probably with maybe like 2-3 minutes left on the clock, Greg and I got to hit the elevator, get all the way downstairs, and then begin our march to the coaches club to set up for the postgame show. But we're walking kind of like in the bowels of the stadium. Yeah. There's really not too many TVs around, and we're basically just judging by like the crowd reaction. And then like once we get to maybe one of the tunnels, we'll like peek our heads down and see like what happened, or because if it is a close game, you just want to make sure that what happened. So when you go on the air, you're prepared, and you can discuss it. But yeah, we get down to the coaches club there in the stadium where all the fans are chilling out watching the game, and 2-hour post-game show afterwards. And the good thing is when we're done, you leave the stadium, the place is deserted, parking lot's empty. You don't got to worry about traffic going home. So yeah, for most 1 o'clock games, I'm usually in my driveway, maybe somewhere around 6:30-ish, maybe in that ballpark. It's a long day, but hey, we're watching a football game. So there's worse things to do for sure.
So pregame wraps up, make that dash up the elevators to the press box. What is the food item you're grabbing right away after a long morning? And you got to fill up because you're going to be working long. Then, people don't realize that the broadcasters need to stay hydrated and get their energy and carbs and whatnot too.
Just like now, as a matter of fact.
Yeah, sip that water.
That's it. Believe it or not, they as I said, we're spoiled. And the people over at the stadium, I always say, like, a lot of the workers and the people there that we interact with each week, that's almost like a family. That's like our Sunday family. And they take such good care of us. They really and truly do. I mean, and one of the gentlemen, as a matter of fact, he's a good friend of mine. I just ran into him a couple of weeks ago at a concert over at MetLife, because he runs, he's not just for the games, he runs everything for every event there. And so they take care of us really, really well. They'll send some food over, whatever they're cooking up in the clubs, in the different, suites and this and that for some of the patrons on game day. So yeah, it's not one thing specifically. It's like a surprise, whatever they send over, but they take real, real good care of us. And like I said, we're so spoiled, just, how good we have it. And you're not going to hear too many complaints from me. That's for sure.
Perfect. So how, in your tenure here, obviously the Jets, they haven't been too great. Basically by October, they've been out of it. How tough has that been for you? And how do you keep the listeners engaged knowing that, well, this team is not playing so well right now?
As long as they don't blame me for it, Nick, right? I mean, as long as they don't put 2 and 2 together and say, geez, since Graca took over, this team hasn't been very good. And they haven't, but all kidding aside, it's tough, right? I mean, anything you do, and especially if you work for a team, you want to be affiliated with a winner. You want to talk about good games, happy times. And in the 5 years or whatever it is since I've been doing it, I mean, those have been few and far between. The fans are more ornery. They want to, fire this guy, fire that guy. This guy stinks, change the positions here. We need to do this. We need to do that. And then in a lot of ways, you're almost in a position to where, like, we all grew up as fans. But what I try to tell people is when you do this for a living, at least this is how I feel, you kind of have to separate church and state a little bit. Like, the fan card goes out the window. The pom-poms go out the window. If you want to do an honest job and give an honest, objective opinion, which I think people deserve and people want, you have to separate those things. So we don't become, Jet fans when that mic turns on. You become, objective broadcasters covering the team and looking at it unbiasedly and saying, okay, this is the reality. This is what has to be done. And you have to be a little bit more rational than the fan is, right? Fan is short for fanatic. So they are going to be going crazy at all times, but you can't do that. You have to be able to walk that line. And I think that, we've done a good job of mastering that. And I'm not one of those like screaming, yelling type of guys anyways. Like, I try to keep it even keel because you're doing a disservice to yourself. And then I'm not going to be able to do my job as well as I have to do it if things get crazy. So yeah, you just have to be level-headed about it. And look, do I hope that they turn it around? Absolutely. Do I, envision and dream about maybe making the playoffs one day in the near future and we would actually get to go to the playoff games and, even showing up to the stadium and talking about big games in the month of December, late in the season? I mean, that would be fantastic. That's why you do this. That's why you want to get into this type of job here. So hopefully those days are approaching a lot sooner. I have a lot of faith in the people in charge. I mean, you look at the work that they did this offseason, improving the roster. It's a heck of a lot more talented on paper. But games aren't won and lost on paper. You got to go out there and do it on the field.
So I think a good part of the post-game show is definitely when you go to the callers. So is it true that Ira in Sun Island calls up at halftime? Because it seems like he's always the first person you guys go to right when the call is up.
No, he doesn't call up at halftime because they won't answer the phone. They only start answering because I can see the program on my little iPad that I have there with me. No, they all wait till the game is over, of course. Before they get in. And look, Ira's a good fan. He's dedicated. He's devoted. He bleeds green, if you will. That's his, seems like his life obsession. And you appreciate that. What I like about Ira too, he's pretty even keel and he's pretty rational about the whole thing. Like he's not one of these just outrageous, like we talked about a little bit earlier type of fans. Yeah, sure, he's disappointed when they don't do well and he just wants them to win. But, I can appreciate the passion certainly, because once upon a time I was that kid, living and dying with the team and just like obsessing over it constantly. And it takes a toll on you. It certainly does.
Absolutely. So let's say hypothetically here, either Sirius or ESPN came to you and was like, "Hey, Dan, we need somebody to fill in doing play-by-play here." Is that something that you would be interested in? And if so, what sport would you think you'd want to pursue in that path?
I actually called one of the Jet games last year. Yeah. As a matter of fact, the game against the Jaguars. And it's funny because I had gotten an opportunity to do a couple play-by-play things like with the Jets. There were a couple of opportunities maybe for like 10 minutes or something like that at the end of the half when they had ceremonies and Bob had to run downstairs, with the 2-minute warning to MC the halftime ceremony. And that's going to happen again this year because we have a few Ring of Honor inductions. But Bob fell under the weather leading up to that Jaguar game. And they called me like a couple of days before and they said, "Hey, how would you like to call a game?" I said, "Would I?" Because, just in the, and it's funny, getting into the business growing up, that really wasn't something I ever had designs on doing play-by-play. I just didn't. I always just was more about, the opinions, the talk show, that type of stuff. But the little flirtations I had doing it, I started to develop. I was like, boy, this is fun. And more importantly, it was a deviation from the same thing that I had been doing for the last, 15 years or however long it's been. So, I got the itch, as they say, and, to have the chance to call a full game, it kind of just fueled the passion a little bit more. So, absolutely, that's certainly something that I'm more than open to doing moving forward and maybe even pursuing. Wink, wink. You know what I mean, Nick? To see if some of those chances could pop up around the corner as well in other ventures. But yeah, I think it's great. I think it's a lot of fun, and because it's about the game. All that other stuff you block out. You don't have to worry about opinions and callers and fans and all that. It's just the game. It's you, the game, and telling people what's happening in the game. And I dig that.
All right, we'll see. I mean, Commissioner Manfred said he's looking to expand the baseball team, so could be some openings there for you.
There you go. Never know.
See what happens. So for you in your career, what would you say is your I'm right moment? So what I mean by that is a time where you wanted to pursue something. You ask somebody for advice. They say, "You know what, Dan, I don't think that's going to work for you. Don't do that." And you said, "You know what? I'm going to do it anyway." And ultimately, you will see why it is that I'm right.
Well, that's a good question. I don't know if there was one specifically. I mean, what I could say is that if you don't have any confidence or belief in yourself, and what you bring to the table, then you're not going to get very far. Because the way the industry is, unfortunately, it's not a meritocracy. It's not necessarily who's best, who's better than this person, who's had more experience. It's very, very subjective. It's very, very arbitrary. And that's why I started out by saying, that relationships are what really matter. And getting an opportunity to form these bonds with people, because that's when they think of you. And each and every different network, each and every different person in charge, they kind of go about their business differently. Like some people prefer this type of person, some prefer this type of person. So I don't know necessarily if there was something that somebody said, "No, you can't do it," and I'm right. Hey, I mean, each and every single day, no matter what I do, no matter, what job it is, I feel like you're proving people wrong. Because there's been a lot of people along the way that have said, "No, you're not going to do this. No, you can't do this. No, you're not good enough." So I think it's just each and every day continuing to do what I do and be successful at it. I think it's just more of a collective, more so than, let's say, one thing specifically.
Yeah, absolutely. That's fantastic advice. And sometimes things can get out of control, but kind of just keep your head on your shoulders.
Yeah, for sure.
How do you deal with the haters on Twitter? I know you're pretty active on Twitter.
Yeah, no, I mean, I don't consider myself as active as maybe some are. Like and God bless them. I mean, everybody does their own thing, but I just don't understand how some people, are literally sitting there like every 5 minutes putting something out. And I can never be that guy. I go through these like spurts where it'll like, it hits me and then I decide to just kind of go crazy for, a few minutes or so on and
Right.
so forth. And that's pretty much it. You, how do you deal with it? You don't really pay too much mind to it. At least I don't. I've been doing this long enough that there's a lot of people that, like the old expression goes, they're haters more than
Yep.
anything else. And they wish they could be doing what you're doing. And that's really what it stems from more than anything else. And most of these people have, not had an ounce of the success that, you've had in your life, or, it's more probably stems from envy than anything else. Like they wish they could trade places with you in a second, and you just leave it at that. Like it's no different than that previous question you said, like when people said you couldn't do this, it's very rare that people are going to go out of their way to tell you complimentary things. It's
Right.
just more going to be, how can I poke the bear and needle you and that type of thing. And the great thing about Twitter is that it's a nameless, faceless, outlet where you can just kind of bully people and get away with it and not have to deal with the consequences. Let's face it. Like half of the things that people write to you that are negative on social media, they would never actually come up and say those things to your face, because then they realize, oh, there might be consequences. So
Yeah.
I think the important thing is, and the advice that I give to people is, block out the hate. Don't even let it affect you at all, because what I see is the people that like to get into those squabbles, and a lot of them are just trying to bait people anyway. Like
Right.
they want them to fight back. They want them to possibly, return the insult to where then it could get them in trouble. And believe me, that is so not worth it in any way at all.
Absolutely. All right, Dan, this has been great. What we always do here is we always give our guests the last word. So is there anything you'd like to share or promote? Go right ahead.
No, I mean, Nick, I thank you for having me on the show, and you keep doing what you're doing as well, because I think as we continue to advance and evolve, and as media continues to grow and technology, having the opportunity to do a format like this, I think is great. And so for people that are just starting out, do things like this. Back when I got into the business way back when, we didn't have anything like this. There was no Zoom.
Yeah.
There were no podcasts, things like that. That the podcast thing was still like in the very early infancy. But, the fact that there's so many different ways now to engage with the internet, and you don't necessarily have to be working for a major network. You do things like this, you use the internet, get yourself out there that way. And, that could open some doors for you. There's no set way to make your mark in this business. You go about doing it, what you have at your disposal and what you think is going to present you in the best possible light. So just keep on doing what you're doing. That's what I tell people.
All right, I appreciate that. And I'm sure the listeners appreciate the advice as well. So that's going to do it here for this episode of You Know I'm Right. For our very special guest, Dan, I'm Nick, and this has been You Know I'm Right.